The Great Hall of Harmony Prime stretched out like a metal ocean under artificial stars. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated sections, each area designed to accommodate their unique biology and customs. The air recyclers worked overtime to maintain the complex atmospheric mixture that kept everyone breathing comfortably. Ambassador Jiwoo Park adjusted his simple black suit and checked his tablet one more time. 30 years of diplomatic service had taught him to prepare for every possible question, every potential insult, every carefully disguised threat that might come his way during these council sessions. He was known throughout the galaxy as the human who never lost his temper, never raised his voice, and never stopped trying to find peaceful solutions to impossible problems. The massive screen at the front of the hall displayed the day's agenda in 17 different languages and symbol systems. Today's topic made Jiwoo's stomach tighten just slightly, though his face remained perfectly calm. The subject read simply, Assessment of Human Military Capabilities and Threat Level. Krell. Voss stood up from the Vorthak section. The 7-foot-tall reptilian warrior wore his ceremonial battle armor even in these peaceful halls. His yellow eyes scanned the assembly before settling on Jiwoo with something that might have been amusement. The Vorthak had conquered 12 worlds before joining the council, and they measured every species by their willingness to fight. Honored colleagues, Krell began, his voice carrying the mechanical translation into dozens of languages simultaneously. We gather today to discuss our human friends and their curious approach to conflict resolution. He gestured toward Jiwoo with one clawed hand. In 30 years of council membership, humans have participated in exactly 0 military actions. They have proposed peaceful solutions to every dispute, mediated every trade conflict, and consistently voted against any use of force. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The insectoid hive mind of Kepler sent harmonious clicking sounds from their section. The ethereal lumina flickered their bioluminescent agreement. Even the warlike Nexari nodded their 6 heads in unison. Silex Prime rose from the Serpentine Alliance section. Her scales shifted color from deep purple to pale blue as she spoke, indicating formal address mode. The statistical analysis supports Krell's observations, she said, her forked tongue tasting the air between words. Human military spending represents only 2% of their gross planetary product. This is unprecedented among spacefaring civilizations. Most species dedicate at least 15% to defense systems. Jiwoo listened carefully, his hands folded in his lap. His expression showed polite interest, as if they were discussing weather patterns rather than questioning his species' courage. He had heard these conversations before, countless times in various forms. The galaxy saw humans as useful mediators precisely because they seemed incapable of violence. The crystalline representative from Zentari chimed in with sounds like breaking glass. The translator rendered her words. During the Proxima border dispute, the human delegation actually trembled when we showed them battle footage. Their physical response to combat imagery suggests deep psychological aversion to warfare. That brought scattered laughter from several sections. Jiwoo smiled pleasantly and made a note on his tablet. The truth was more complicated than the council understood, but there was no need to correct their assumptions. Not yet. Krell continued his presentation, calling up holographic displays that showed human colony worlds. Observe their defensive installations, he said, pointing to orbital platforms around Earth and its colonies. Minimal weaponry, focused primarily on asteroid deflection and space debris. Their fleet consists entirely of exploration and cargo vessels. We have never detected a single purpose-built warship in human space. The display zoomed in on what appeared to be a mining operation near Titan. Heavy industrial ships moved slowly between the ringed planet and its moons, their hulls scarred from years of honest work. Jiwoo recognized the vessel Busan Horizon among them, commanded by Captain Won-Shik Nam. Won-Shik was known throughout the system as a dedicated mining engineer who had never shown interest in anything more exciting than asteroid composition. Reports. Their largest vessels are freight haulers, Silex Prime added, her scales now shifting to yellow with green patterns. Built for cargo capacity, not combat effectiveness. Even their so-called defense force operates primarily search and rescue missions. Admiral Zex of the Andromedan Federation projected tactical assessments that painted humanity as militarily insignificant. His cybernetic implants glowed as he accessed real-time data. Human reaction times in simulated combat scenarios rank among the lowest of all tested species. They consistently choose retreat over engagement, negotiation over confrontation. Jiwoo maintained his peaceful expression while remembering his conversation with Admiral Taemin Choi just before leaving Earth. They had sat in Taemin's office overlooking the Seoul Defense Complex, sharing tea and discussing old strategies from Earth's ancient history. Sun Tzu's words had come up, as they often did. All warfare is based on deception. The presentation continued for 2 hours. Charts showed human population centers clustered around universities and cultural sites rather than military installations. Psychological profiles suggested humans experienced genuine distress when exposed to violence. Trade records indicated they preferred economic cooperation over resource competition. What the Council didn't understand was that humanity had learned lessons from their own bloody past that no other species had been forced to confront. Earth's history was a catalog of increasingly devastating conflicts, each war teaching harder lessons about the cost of violence. By the time they reached the stars, humans had developed something unprecedented: the wisdom to choose peace from a position of strength rather than weakness. During a brief recess, Jiwoo found himself approached by Counselor Rix of the Altarian Republic. The blue-skinned humanoid had always shown more respect for humanity than most council members. "Your people are fascinating, Ambassador," Eric said, her 3 eyes blinking in sequence. "I have studied Earth's historical records. Your species fought terrible wars in your past, yet now you seem incapable of violence. How did such a transformation occur?" Jiwoo sipped water from his flask and considered his answer carefully. "We learned that strength and violence are not the same thing," he replied. "The strongest person in a room is often the one who chooses not to fight." Irix tilted her head, a gesture of confusion among her people. "But surely there must be limits to patience, some line that cannot be crossed?" For just a moment something flickered behind Jiwoo's calm eyes. Something cold and sharp that made Irix step backward involuntarily. Then his gentle smile returned, and she wondered if she had imagined it. "There are some things worth fighting for," Jiwoo said quietly. "We simply hope the galaxy never discovers what those things are." The session resumed with Krell calling for a formal vote on humanity's military classification. The proposal was simple: designate humans as a protected mediator species with no meaningful defensive capabilities. This would allow them to continue their useful diplomatic work while acknowledging their inability to contribute to galactic security. As the votes were cast, Jiwoo sent a brief message to Earth using his diplomatic communicator. The message contained only 2 words in Korean: Yojoni Pyonghwa, still peaceful. In his underground command center, Admiral Taemin Choi received the message and nodded to General Soo-jin Kim. They would maintain the illusion a little longer. Humanity's greatest weapon had always been that nobody saw them coming. The vote passed unanimously, with only humanity abstaining. The Council celebrated another successful session of galactic cooperation. Representatives shared refreshments and discussed trade agreements while Jiwoo quietly packed his diplomatic materials. As the session ended and beings began filing out to their transport ships, Jiwoo remained seated for a few extra moments. He thought about the mining crews who weren't really miners, the cargo ships that carried more than trade goods, and the exploration fleets that had been exploring far more than star systems. Somewhere in the depths of space, beyond the Council's sensor networks, other preparations continued. Captain Dong-hyun Lee was already adjusting course for the Outer Rim territories. His crew, including the brilliant communications officer Hee-jin Yoon, ran what appeared to be routine system checks on equipment that definitely wasn't routine. The galaxy slept peacefully that night, secure in their understanding of humanity's place in the cosmic order. They had successfully categorized the newest species as harmless mediators, useful for resolving disputes but irrelevant to serious matters of power and security. None of them noticed the subtle changes in shipping patterns throughout human space. None of them detected the encrypted signals bouncing between seemingly innocent relay stations. None of them realized that 30 years of careful observation and patience was about to pay off in ways they couldn't imagine. Ji-woo finally stood and walked toward the exit, nodding politely to the few remaining representatives. Tomorrow he would file his report with Earth Command, and life would continue as it always had. Peaceful, productive, and completely underestimated. The galaxy was about. The emergency session alarm echoed through Harmony Prime like a death knell. Representatives who had been enjoying their evening meals in the station's cultural district rushed back to the Great Hall. The artificial stars overhead dimmed as emergency, lighting cast everything in harsh red shadows. Ji-woo Park arrived to find chaos. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages while translators struggled to keep up with the overlapping conversations. The massive central display showed a star map, with one system pulsing angry red. The Melody homeworld of Crescenda was under attack. Warlord Zerath appeared on the main screen, his metallic exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh lights of his command ship. The Zephyrian leader stood 9 feet tall, his cybernetic implants covering half his scarred face. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship Dominion's Wrath buzzed with activity as his warriors prepared for systematic destruction. People of the galaxy, Zerath's voice boomed through the translation system. The Zephyrian Dominion claims the Melody system by right of conquest. These crystal singers have occupied valuable territory for too long. They produce nothing of worth except their meaningless songs. The display shifted to show Crescenda from orbit. The planet's surface sparkled like a cut diamond, covered in vast cities of living crystal that resonated with the harmonic frequencies of their builders. The Melody had evolved from silicon-based life forms, their entire civilization built around sound and vibration. Their cities were instruments, their art was music, and their very language was composed of songs that could heal minds and mend broken spirits. Council leader Krell Voss slammed his clawed fist on his podium. This is a violation of the Galactic Peace Accords. The Melody are a protected artistic species under Section 7 of the Cultural Preservation Treaty. Zerath's laugh was like grinding metal. Treaties are for the weak. The Zephyrian Dominion recognizes only the law of strength. We give the galaxy 48 hours to remove any personnel from the system. After that, we begin full planetary processing. The screen filled with images from Zerath's previous conquests. Worlds stripped bare of life, their surfaces scarred by massive mining operations. The Zephyrians didn't just defeat their enemies, they consumed entire ecosystems to feed their war machine. Their philosophy was simple. Only the strong deserved to survive, and strength was measured purely by the ability to destroy. Silex Prime's scale shifted through rapid color changes, indicating extreme agitation. Surely the Dominion cannot be serious about attacking Crescenda. The Melody have no military installations, no defensive capabilities beyond basic orbital monitors. Exactly why they make perfect targets, Zerath replied. Their crystal cities will provide excellent raw materials for our construction projects. Their harmonic technology will be useful for our psychological warfare divisions. Ji-woo watched the exchange with growing concern. He had visited Crescenda many times during his diplomatic career. The Melody were possibly the most purely peaceful species in known space. They literally could not comprehend the concept of intentional harm. Their language contained no words for violence, anger, or hatred. When they tried to understand such concepts, they experienced physical pain. The emergency debate that followed revealed the uncomfortable truth about galactic politics. Despite their moral outrage, most species were unwilling to risk war with the Zephyrian Dominion. The Vorthak had their own territorial disputes to worry about. The Andromedan Federation was dealing with internal rebellion. The Serpentine Alliance was focused on economic expansion. Admiral Zex spoke for many when he said, "The Dominion commands over 300 warships. Any intervention would require a coalition of at least 6 major powers working in perfect coordination. The logistics alone would take months to arrange." "The Melody don't have months," Ji-woo said quietly. His words carried clearly through the hall's acoustic systems. According to the attack timeline, full bombardment begins in 47 hours and 18 minutes. Krell turned to face the human delegation. You are correct, Ambassador Park. Which brings us to an obvious solution. His reptilian features arranged themselves into what passed for a smile among his species. Humans excel at diplomatic intervention. Your people have successfully mediated every major dispute in the past 3 decades. Perhaps it's time for humanity to take the lead on this crisis. The suggestion rippled through the assembly with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Several representatives nodded agreement. The humans were perfect for this kind of mission. They would try every possible peaceful approach, exhaust every diplomatic option, and if they failed, well, nobody expected them to succeed anyway. It would buy time for the real powers to decide whether intervention was worth the cost. Jiwoo stood slowly, his movements deliberate and calm. He had been expecting this moment for years, though not under these exact circumstances. The training simulations had covered hundreds of scenarios, but they had all assumed the catalyst would be a direct threat to human colonies. An attack on innocent third parties required different protocols. The Republic of Earth accepts this responsibility, he said formally. We will dispatch our finest diplomatic vessel immediately. What he didn't mention was that Captain Dong-hyun Lee had been waiting in the outer system for the past 6 hours. The Soul's Pride was officially classified as an exploration vessel, designed for long-range scientific missions and cultural exchange programs. Her manifest listed her crew as researchers, linguists, and cultural specialists. As the council session dissolved into smaller groups discussing logistics and legal frameworks, Jiwoo stepped into a private communication booth. The encrypted channel connected him directly to Earth Command in Seoul. General Sujin Kim's face appeared on the screen, her expression professionally neutral. The Council has authorized diplomatic intervention, Jiwoo reported using the standard diplomatic codes. Timeline is critical. Less than 48 hours before irreversible action begins. Sujin nodded once. Understood. Captain Lee is standing by with the cultural exchange package. Will you be accompanying the mission? Affirmative. I'll transfer. To the Soul's Pride within 6 hours. Any special requirements for the diplomatic approach? Jiwoo paused, thinking about the images of Xerath's previous conquests. Authorization Level 7. Full Cultural Sensitivity Protocols. Sujin's expression didn't change, but Jiwoo caught the slight tightening around her eyes. Authorization Level 7 hadn't been used since the protocols were established. It meant the gloves were coming off, confirmed. Level 7 authorization, good hunting, Ambassador. The communication ended, and Jiwoo returned to the main hall where delegates were still debating response options. The Altarian Republic was proposing economic sanctions. The Proxima Alliance suggested filing formal protests through established channels. The Andromedan Federation recommended sending a fact-finding mission to assess the situation. Meanwhile, in a seemingly unrelated conversation, Trade Commissioner Erix mentioned that several human cargo vessels had recently changed their shipping routes. The Incheon Trader and Busan Commerce had both filed flight plans for the Outer Rim territories, claiming routine supply runs to research stations. What Erix didn't know was that Captain Young Mi Seo of the Incheon Trader had just received her activation codes after 15 years of patient waiting. Her cargo bay contained emergency supplies and medical equipment, but the manifest didn't list the military-grade shielding or the sealed compartments filled with equipment that definitely wasn't designed for trade missions. Similarly, Captain Wonshik Nam had been mining asteroids in the outer system for 12 years. His crew knew him as a dedicated engineer who could identify valuable minerals from sensor readings alone. They didn't know about his other qualifications, the ones that had earned him command rank in Earth's deep space operations. The Busan Horizon looked like a standard mining vessel because it had been doing standard mining work. The fact that it could transform into something else entirely was just good engineering. Back on Earth, Admiral Taemin Choi stood in the situation, room deep beneath Seoul. The walls were lined with screens showing star charts, fleet positions, and real-time intelligence feeds from across human space. Officers moved quietly between stations, their efficient movements speaking of years of training and preparation. Communications. Specialist Haye Jin Yoon monitored channels that officially didn't exist. Her screens showed the positions of human vessels throughout the galaxy, each one marked with status indicators that would have surprised their official captains. The Soul's Pride was green and ready. The Busan horizon was moving into position. Dozens of other ships were adjusting their courses with perfect coordination. Signal status on the Melody communication arrays? Taemin asked. Still active, sir. The Dominion hasn't begun jamming operations yet. We're receiving their distress harmonics clearly. The Melody distress songs were heartbreaking. Unlike other species who sent digital emergency signals, the crystal beings sang their fear and confusion in frequencies that touched something deep in human psychology. Their cities were literally crying out for help, each crystalline spire adding its voice to a chorus of terror that only humans seemed to truly hear. Taemin had been listening to those songs for 6 hours now. The Soul's Pride dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Melody system, and immediately Captain Dong Hyun Lee knew they were too late to prevent the horror from beginning. The sensor readings showed Zephyrian ships in bombardment, formation around Crescenda, their weapons already charging for the first wave of attacks. Communications, open a channel to the Dominion flagship, Dong Hyun ordered. His bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, their fingers dancing over controls they had memorized through countless drills. To any observer, they looked like experienced explorers preparing for another routine diplomatic contact. Jin Yoon's hands moved across her communication array, establishing contact with both the Zephyrian fleet and the singing cities below. The Melody distress harmonics filled the bridge with sounds like crystal wind chimes caught in a storm. Each note spoke of terror and confusion from beings who had never experienced violence in their entire evolutionary history. Dominion flagship responding, Jin reported. Warlord Zerath will speak with the human ambassador. Jiwoo stepped forward as the main screen activated. Zerath's scarred face appeared, his cybernetic eye glowing red as it focused on the human. Delegation. Behind him, Zephyrian warriors prepared targeting systems with eager anticipation. So the galaxy sends its pet negotiators, Zerath said, his voice carrying contempt that needed no translation. Have you come to offer the Melody surrender on their behalf? I come offering dialogue, Jiwoo replied calmly. The Galactic Council requests that you honor the established protocols for territorial disputes. The Melody are willing to discuss resource-sharing agreements and cultural exchange programs. Zerath's laugh was a sound like breaking bones. The time for talking ended when we entered this system. Watch your screens, little diplomat. Learn what real power looks like. The first bombardment began without warning. Zephyrian plasma cannons opened fire on the northern continent of Crescenda, where the Great Harmony, the largest crystal city, had stood for 10,000 years. The crystalline structures didn't simply break under the assault, they screamed. The sound that came through the communication channels was unlike anything in the galaxy's recorded history. It was the death cry of living architecture, the final song of beings whose entire existence was based on beauty and harmony. The crystal spires that had taken centuries to grow shattered in seconds, each break sending waves of psychic pain through the harmonic network that connected all Melody everywhere. On the bridge of the Soul's Pride, every human present went completely still. Heejin's hands stopped moving over her controls. Donghyun's jaw clenched so tightly that his teeth made small grinding sounds. Even Jiwoo, who had maintained diplomatic composure through 3 decades of the galaxy's worst negotiations, felt something cold and sharp settle in his chest. The second wave of bombardment targeted civilian areas. Zerath had positioned his ships to ensure maximum psychological impact, destroying the most beautiful and culturally significant sites first. Crystal gardens that had taken millennia to cultivate vanished in seconds. Harmonic archives containing the complete musical history of Melody civilization were reduced to silence. Magnificent, isn't it? Zerath said, watching the destruction with obvious pleasure. The Melody thought their songs could protect them. They believed beauty had power. Now they learned that only strength matters. Jiwoo opened his mouth to respond, but Zerath wasn't finished. The warlord gestured to someone off-screen, and the display split to show ground-level footage from Crescenda. Melody civilians, beings who looked like walking sculptures of living crystal, stumbled through the ruins of their homes. Their songs had changed from harmonic beauty to discordant wails of grief. "Watch this, human," Zerath commanded. "This is what happens to species that refuse to acknowledge superior force." The ground footage showed Zephyrian soldiers herding a group of Melody civilians into what had once been a concert hall. The crystal beings were singing desperately, trying to use their harmonic abilities to heal the psychological trauma they were experiencing. Their song spoke of forgiveness, of hope that this was all some terrible misunderstanding. Zerath appeared in the ground footage, his massive form towering over the huddled Melody. He spoke directly to them, knowing the humans were watching. "Your songs are weak. Your peace is weakness. Your entire species is an evolutionary failure." Then he activated his plasma sword and began executing them one by one, while they sang lullabies to comfort each other in their final moments. Something broke inside the bridge of the soul's pride. It wasn't visible to external sensors or casual observation, but everyone present felt it. 30 years of careful diplomatic training, decades of choosing patience over action, generations of hard-learned wisdom about the costs of violence, all of it shattered like Melody crystal under the weight of pure evil. Jiwoo reached up slowly and removed his diplomatic insignia. The small pin that marked him as Earth's official representative to the Galactic Council had been worn by 7 ambassadors before him. Each had carried it with pride, believing in the power of words over weapons. He set it gently on the nearest console. "Captain Lee," he said, his voice still calm but carrying undertones that made Heejin look up sharply. "Please send a message to Earth Command." "What should the message contain, Ambassador?" Jiwoo looked at the screen where Zerath was still broadcasting his atrocities, believing he was intimidating the weak humans into submission. The warlord had just made the greatest tactical error in Zephyrian history. He had shown humanity exactly what kind of evil they were dealing with. "One word," Jiwoo said. "Sijug." Heejin's eyes widened slightly. She had been born on Earth, and she knew enough Korean to understand. Sijug meant begin. The message went out on frequencies that had been silent since the first human ships left Earth orbit. It was a simple transmission, lasting less than 3 seconds, but it traveled to every human vessel, outpost, and colony in known space. Mining, operations in the asteroid belts, trade convoys moving between systems, research stations in the galactic rim, cultural exchange ships visiting alien worlds. All of them received the same single word, and 30 years of careful preparation began to unfold. On the mining vessel, Busan Horizon, Captain Wanshik Nam read the message while supposedly analyzing core samples. He walked calmly to what appeared to be a storage locker and entered a code that hadn't been used since the ship's construction. The locker opened to reveal a control panel that definitely wasn't standard mining equipment. "All hands to stations," Wanshik announced over the ship's intercom. "We've just received notification of a geological emergency in the Melody system. All mining operations are suspended immediately." His crew, who had worked alongside him for years, moved to their positions without question. They had always known Wanshik was more than he appeared to be, just as they had always suspected their mining ship was built for purposes beyond extracting asteroids. The transformation began slowly. External mining arrays folded inward, revealing weapon systems beneath. Cargo holds opened to display fighter craft instead of ore containers. The ship's entire hull configuration shifted as hidden armor plating deployed and defensive systems came online. Similar transformations were occurring throughout human space. Trade vessels commanded by officers like Youngmi Seo revealed their true nature as fast attack craft. Research stations began broadcasting new identification codes that classified them as military installations. Survey ships activated weapons, systems that had been disguised as scientific equipment for 3 decades. Back on the Soul's Pride, Donghyun received confirmation signals from across the fleet. Ships that had spent years playing their peaceful roles were finally dropping their disguises. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's greatest deception wasn't their apparent weakness. It was the fact that they had built an entire military infrastructure while everyone assumed they were just really good at peaceful pursuits. "Warlord Zerath," Jiwoo said, addressing the screen where the Zephyrian leader was still gloating over his easy victory. I have a counter-proposal for you. Zerath turned back to the camera, amused. The human wants to negotiate while I burn. His friend's world? How pathetic. What could you possibly offer that would interest the Dominion? Surrender, Jiwoo said simply. The bridge of the Dominion flagship fell silent. Even Zerath seemed momentarily confused by the human's response. You offer the Melodies surrender? They cannot surrender what they have already lost. No, Jiwoo replied, and for the first time in 30 years of diplomatic service, his smile was not kind. I'm offering you the chance to surrender to us. Zerath's cybernetic systems must have malfunctioned because surely he couldn't have heard correctly. You threaten me? With what army, little man? Your single exploration ship against my 300 warships? Jiwoo looked directly into the camera, and something in his eyes made several Zephyrian officers step backward. You've been watching us for 30 years, Zerath. You think you understand what humans are capable of. You're about to learn how wrong you've been. On Crescenda's surface, the bombardment continued. More crystal cities fell silent, their songs ending forever. But something new was happening in orbit around the planet. Ships were appearing on sensors. The first shot fired in the Battle of Crescenda came from the Busan horizon, and it rewrote everything the galaxy thought it knew about human technology. Captain Wanshik Nam had been aiming for the Zephyrian destroyer Painbringer, a ship designed to maximize civilian casualties during planetary bombardments. The railgun projectile traveled at 30% of light speed and punched through the destroyer's shields, armor, and hull in less than 2 seconds. The Painbringer simply ceased to exist. Warlord Zerath stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. His sensors insisted the shot had come from a mining vessel, but mining equipment couldn't generate that kind of energy output. His best warships couldn't generate that kind of energy output. All ships, target the human vessels, Zerath commanded. Show these mammals what real weapons can do. The Zephyrian response was immediate and overwhelming. 300 warships turned their guns on what appeared to be fewer than 30 human craft. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and quantum torpedoes filled space with enough destructive energy to sterilize a small moon. When the weapons fire cleared, every human ship was exactly where it had been before. Not a single vessel showed damage. Impossible, breathed Zerath's tactical officer, a cybernetically enhanced warrior who had participated in 50 conquered worlds. Their defensive systems are absorbing 100% of our weapons output. Captain Young Mi Seo aboard. The Incheon trader opened her cargo bays and released what her manifest had listed as mining drones. The small craft that emerged moved with the fluid grace of living things, each one capable of independent thought and action. They swarmed toward the Zephyrian fleet like angry wasps, too small and fast for the enemy's massive guns to track effectively. The drones weren't designed to destroy. They were designed to disable. Each one carried electromagnetic pulse generators, computer viruses, and molecular disassembly tools that could take apart enemy systems at the atomic level. Within minutes, Zephyrian ships began losing power, weapons, and navigation systems. Admiral Taemin Choi materialized on Zerath's command screen, transmitted from his flagship Incheon's Fury. The massive vessel had arrived without triggering any proximity alarms, somehow approaching from a direction that sensors insisted was empty space. Taemin wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's Defense Force, with ribbons and insignia that no alien database could identify. Warlord Zerath, Taemin said formally. I am Admiral Taemin Choi of the Terran Defense Fleet. You are hereby ordered to cease all hostile actions against Melody civilians and surrender your forces for war crimes prosecution. Zerath's cybernetic eye glowed brighter as his combat systems analyzed the human admiral. You dare make demands of the Zephyrian Dominion? Your pathetic fleet cannot match our firepower. You're right, Taemin agreed. Our firepower is considerably greater. The Incheon's Fury demonstrated this point by targeting the Zephyrian command ship Absolute Victory. The weapon that fired didn't appear on any sensor readings. There was no energy discharge, no projectile signature, no electromagnetic disturbance. The massive Zephyrian dreadnought simply developed a perfectly spherical hole through its center section, as if reality had decided that particular space no longer needed to exist. Controlled singularity weapon, Taemin explained conversationally. We developed it while you were watching us build hospitals and schools. Quite useful for precision removal of threatening objects. The Zephyrian fleet began maneuvering frantically, trying to establish defensive formations against an enemy they couldn't understand. Their ships had been designed to fight conventional opponents using conventional weapons. Nothing in their tactical databases prepared them for technology that seemed to violate basic physics. Ground combat was already beginning on Crescenda's surface. Colonel Byung-Ho Han led the first wave of human forces, transported by what the galaxy had assumed were routine supply shuttles. His soldiers moved through the crystal cities with purpose that spoke of years of training specifically for this environment. The Zephyrian ground troops were shocked to encounter resistance. They had expected to fight terrified civilians, not professional soldiers who seemed to anticipate their every move. Sergeant Da Un-Yang's squad rescued a group of Melody children from a collapsed resonance chamber, their gentle handling of the crystal beings contrasting sharply with their lethal efficiency against Zephyrian warriors. How are they predicting our movements? Demanded Zephyrian Ground Commander Vex as his forces were systematically outmaneuvered by apparently inferior numbers. His tactical AI couldn't explain how the humans always seemed to be in exactly the right position at exactly the right time. The answer was in orbit, where strategic AI Wu Jin Park coordinated the battle from his position aboard the Daegu Explorer. His quantum processing systems had been analyzing Zephyrian tactics for decades, building models of their behavior patterns from careful observation of their previous conquests. Every military engagement in Zephyrian history had been recorded, studied and fed into prediction algorithms that could anticipate their strategies better than they could themselves. Enemy reinforcements approaching from Grid 77 Alpha, Wu Jin reported to Colonel Byung-Ho Han. Suggest relocation to Crystal Formation Beta 9. Acoustic resonance will provide both cover and tactical advantage. The human forces moved like they had been fighting in crystal cities their entire lives, using the Melody's harmonic architecture to their advantage, while avoiding damage to the structures they were trying to protect. They fought with weapons that seemed almost gentle compared to Zephyrian brutality, precision energy beams that disabled rather than destroyed, capture nets that neutralized enemies without permanent harm. But their restraint only made them more terrifying. Every Zephyrian attack was countered perfectly. Every tactical maneuver was anticipated and neutralized. The humans fought like they could see the future. Communications specialist Na Young Lim had spent the first hour of combat breaking every Zephyrian encryption system simultaneously. Their command frequencies were now completely compromised, allowing human forces to hear enemy orders before they were fully transmitted. She also took control of several Zephyrian ships' computer systems, turning their own defensive programs against them. Their artificial intelligence is remarkably primitive, Na Young reported to Admiral Taemin, based on simple aggressive algorithms, with no adaptive learning protocols. I've convinced 12 of their ships that their own weapon systems are enemy targets. Watching from his flagship, Zerath realized his technological superiority was an illusion. The humans weren't just matching Zephyrian capabilities. They were demonstrating technologies that seemed decades ahead of anything else in the galaxy. Weapons that worked by principles his scientists couldn't explain. Defensive systems that absorbed energy and somehow made human ships stronger. Tactical coordination that suggested either impossible communication speeds or genuine prescience. How long have you been preparing for this? Zerath demanded during a brief lull in the fighting. Since the moment we learned there were species in the galaxy capable of this kind of evil, Taemin replied. Did you really think we spent 30 years building exploration ships and cultural centers? Every vessel, every installation, every technology we developed was designed with dual purposes. We hoped we'd never need the second purpose. The battle was effectively over within 6 hours, though scattered fighting continued as Zephyrian forces struggled to comprehend their complete defeat. Ships that had conquered worlds found themselves disabled by mining drones. Elite warriors, who had terrorized entire star systems, were captured by soldiers who treated them with professional courtesy, even while demonstrating overwhelming superiority. Lieutenant Sang-Hoon Kwak led the medical teams that treated wounded Zephyrians with the same care they showed injured Melody. The human approach to warfare was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed, utterly lethal when necessary, but guided by principles that demanded mercy toward defeated enemies. "This makes no sense," muttered Zephyrian strategic commander Nix as he was processed through a human detention facility. "In every previous conquest, defeated enemies either fled or died fighting. Why do these humans treat prisoners with dignity?" The answer came from Nurse Min-Ah Cho, who was ensuring his combat injuries received proper treatment. "Because defeating you isn't the same as becoming like you," she said simply. "We fight to protect innocent life, not to prove our superiority." Back in space, Admiral Tae-min stood on the bridge of his flagship and surveyed the aftermath. The Zephyrian fleet was completely neutralized. Ships disabled rather than destroyed, crews captured rather than killed. Human engineering teams were already working to repair the crystal cities below. Their construction techniques designed specifically to work with melody harmonic architecture. "Admiral," Communications Officer Hye Jin reported, "we're receiving priority transmissions from Harmony Prime. The Galactic Council is demanding immediate explanations." Taemin nodded. The galaxy would have questions, and humanity owed them answers. But first, there was work to finish. The Melody needed medical attention, Crescenda required reconstruction, and the Zephyrian prisoners needed to be processed according to galactic law. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 3 days after the Battle of Crescenda, and the Great Hall had never been so quiet. Representatives who usually filled the space with constant chatter and political maneuvering sat in stunned silence as they reviewed the tactical reports from the Melody system. Admiral Taemin Choi stood at the central podium where Jiwoo Park had spent 3 decades delivering peaceful diplomatic addresses. The Admiral wore his dress uniform, dark, blue with silver insignia that caught the artificial starlight. Behind him, holographic displays showed the current state of the Melody homeworld. Crystal cities rebuilt and singing once again, their harmonic frequencies carrying across space like messages of hope. Krell Voss was the first to speak, his reptilian features showing confusion that bordered on distress. "Admiral Choi, this council requires explanation. Our records show no evidence of human military development, no warship construction, no weapons testing, no combat training facilities." "That's correct," Taemin replied calmly. "You saw exactly what we wanted you to see." The simple statement sent ripples of unease through the assembly. Species that had built their power on military might were struggling to understand how they had been so completely deceived for so long. Silex Prime's scales shifted through rapid color changes, indicating extreme agitation. The Zephyrian Dominion possessed the most advanced fleet in this sector. 300 warships with proven combat records. How did 30 human vessels achieve total victory in less than 12 hours? 37 vessels, Taemin corrected. And the answer is preparation. While you were watching us build schools and hospitals, we were learning everything about galactic warfare. Every conflict, every tactic, every weapon system ever used was studied and analyzed. We prepared for every possible threat. He gestured to the tactical displays. The Busan Horizon wasn't just a mining ship that could fight. It was a weapons platform disguised as mining equipment. Every human vessel you've observed for 3 decades was designed with dual purposes. We hoped we'd never need the second. Purpose. Counselor Erix of the Altarian Republic leaned forward, her 3 eyes focusing intently on the human admiral. "But your psychological profiles showed genuine fear responses to violence. Our empaths detected authentic distress when humans witnessed combat scenarios." "The distress was real," Taemin confirmed. "Humans hate violence. We find warfare psychologically traumatic and morally repugnant. But being capable of something and enjoying it are entirely different concepts." He called up new displays showing human training facilities that had been hidden beneath cultural centers and research installations. Every human child learns combat, skills alongside mathematics and literature. Not because we want to create warriors, but because we understand that sometimes good people must be prepared to stop evil people. The revelation sent shockwaves through species that had built their identities around military prowess. The Vorthak had conquered through superior aggression. The Nexari dominated through technological advancement. The Andromedans maintained control through strategic positioning. Humanity had achieved something none of them had considered possible. They had become the most powerful military force in known space, while appearing completely harmless. Colonel Byung-Ho Han appeared via holographic link from Crescenda's surface, where his forces were coordinating reconstruction efforts with Melody engineers. The psychological warfare aspect was unintentional, he reported. We genuinely do experience stress responses to violence, but stress and inability are not the same thing. The display showed human soldiers working alongside crystal beings to rebuild the Great Harmony. Sergeant Da Yun Yang was teaching young Melody how to sing healing songs for traumatized survivors, while her squad provided security against any remaining Zephyrian holdouts. Your people fight with restraint we have never observed, noted Chancellor Kex of the Centauri Consortium. Every engagement showed precise application of force designed to disable rather than destroy. This suggests training protocols focused on minimal casualty outcomes. Correct, Taemin acknowledged. Human military doctrine prioritizes protection of innocent life above all other considerations. We developed weapons and tactics specifically, designed to neutralize threats while preserving as much life as possible. What he didn't mention was how difficult those weapons had been to develop. Creating technology powerful enough to stop determined aggressors while precise enough to avoid collateral damage had required scientific breakthroughs that pushed the boundaries of physics itself. Strategic AI Woojin Park provided analysis from his quantum processing systems. Zephyrian tactical algorithms were based on conventional military theory. They assumed enemies would respond with proportional force using similar technological approaches. Human doctrine operates from fundamentally different principles. The AI's words carried weight because artificial intelligence was considered neutral and objective by most galactic species. Wu Jin's analysis confirmed what the Council was struggling to accept. Humanity hadn't just hidden their military capabilities, they had developed an entirely new approach to warfare. The singularity weapons used against Zephyrian capital ships represent technology at least 50 years ahead of current galactic standards, Wu Jin continued. The precision required to create controlled gravitational anomalies suggests mastery of fundamental forces that most species are still trying to understand. Jiwoo Park entered the hall during Wu Jin's presentation, resuming his role as Earth's diplomatic representative. He had spent the past 3 days coordinating with Melody leaders to establish reconstruction protocols and ensuring Zephyrian prisoners received treatment according to galactic law. Ambassador Park, Krell said, his voice carrying undertones of something that might have been respect. The Council requires understanding. How long has humanity been capable of this level of military action? Since before we left Earth, Jiwoo replied honestly. Our species learned early that the capacity for violence and the choice to use it are separate decisions. We developed our military capabilities as insurance against exactly this kind of situation. He gestured toward the displays showing Crescenda's reconstruction. The Melody never hurt anyone. They contributed beauty and healing to the galaxy. When someone decided to destroy them for profit, the choice became simple. Communications specialist Na Young Lim provided additional context from her analysis of captured Zephyrian records. Enemy intelligence files show they had been planning to attack human colonies after completing Melody conquest. They viewed our apparent pacifism as weakness to be exploited. The revelation changed the entire context of the battle. Humanity hadn't just intervened to protect allies. They had eliminated a direct threat to their own survival. The Dominion's strategic plan called for enslaving human populations to work in processing facilities on conquered worlds. Na Young continued. They believed our diplomatic nature would make us ideal servants for more aggressive species. Zerath himself was brought before the Council via secure transmission from his detention facility on Crescenda. The former warlord looked smaller somehow, his cybernetic implants powered down and his armor replaced with standard prisoner clothing. You deceived us, he accused, staring directly at Jiwoo. You made us believe you were weak. We never claimed to be weak, Jiwoo corrected. We simply chose to be peaceful. There's a difference. But why? Zareth demanded. Why hide such power? Why pretend to fear combat when you obviously excel at it? The question hung in the air while Jiwoo considered his answer. Around the hall, representatives from dozens of species waited to understand the human paradox. Because, Jiwoo said, finally, true strength is knowing when not to use your power. Any species can build weapons and conquer neighbors. It takes wisdom to build weapons and choose not to use them. He paused, looking around the assembly. For 30 years, we've watched this galaxy solve problems through economic pressure, territorial disputes, and occasional limited conflicts. We saw that most species were fundamentally good, just trying to survive and prosper. Why would we disrupt that with unnecessary demonstrations of force? The Melody representative, a crystal being named Harmony of Seven Winds, spoke for the first time since the attack. Her voice came through the harmonic translators as pure music. The humans fought for us not because we could offer them anything in return, but because destroying beauty and innocence is wrong. They asked for nothing except that the killing stop. Captain Donghyun Lee provided tactical analysis that explained human operational philosophy. Every engagement was planned to minimize casualties on all sides. We could have destroyed the entire Zephyrian fleet, but that would have meant thousands of unnecessary deaths. Instead, we disabled their ability to fight while preserving their ability to surrender. The approach was so foreign to galactic military thinking that several species translators struggled to render the concepts properly. The idea of deliberately limiting your own effectiveness to preserve enemy lives made no sense to cultures built on dominance and survival. Engineering specialist Sang-Hoon Kwak explained the reconstruction efforts on Crescenda. Human construction techniques were developed specifically for working with Melody architecture.